And this week is going to be a big week for a number of reasons. Some days to circle on the calendar for some announcements or debates even tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we got tomorrow, the Democrat debates tomorrow evening. And as we were talking before the show, Tulsi Gabbard will apparently be back on the stage if she doesn't at the last minute kind of boycott the debates. But we'll be glad to see her back on the stage. She's one of the Democrats offering a different viewpoint from kind of the mainstream, the anti-war viewpoint, which I don't remember when that fell out of fashion. I think it was in the Obama years that fell out of fashion with the Democrats, because before that, you remember, what was it, Operation or Code Pink or whatever? They used to have these anti-war rallies. They were harassing President George W. Bush for all those years, and it seemed like the Democrat Party was the anti-war party. But now fast forward just 8 years later to today, and the Democrats are as rabid of, pro-war people as you can find among the neocons, who used to kind of run the Republican Party. And, of course, the Republican Party has sort of shifted maybe in some areas a little bit. At least Donald Trump has shifted to be anti-war just as a concept. Now, we're still, it's funny to even say that because we're still in wars all around the world, and we have troops scattered all around the world at something like, a couple of hundred bases all around the world. So to come in and say that we're somehow anti-war is maybe a little bit of a misnomer. But
not as many in a certain place because
not
of
as
last
many in
week.
Syria. That's right. And Pat, you wanted to know
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, look, I think we had to get out of the way. That's what I think happened. I don't think this was some kind of coordinated effort. Apparently we had about 50 people, which I'm assuming are all special forces trainers, working there with the local Kurds. But, we've been working with the Kurds now for years, and the Kurds have wanted to establish an autonomous region there for years. And you hate to say it, but they just haven't gotten it done. We can't stay over there forever and hold people's hands the way that we seem to want to do, like in Afghanistan and other places. Well, if we just keep staying longer, things will be okay. No. In that part of the world, it seems like things just don't get better. And I don't know what we could possibly do about it, but at some point you just got to throw up your hands and say, look, we can't help this situation by being here. Now, in this particular case, it's my understanding Turkey indicated to us, we're coming in, we're invading. So you guys best get your troops that are there for advisory purposes out of the way, because we don't want to kill those guys, but we can't necessarily control what happens when we do this invasion. An invasion is something that takes planning, logistics. You've got to have the troops mass up to invade, etc. So this was not a decision that was just made.
Didn't sound like that in the news.
Well, the news played it a totally different way, didn't they?
Yes.
And that's what part of the problem is, I think, is that the news is always trying to spin things to get you to think about issues in a certain way. So they start out with a defined outcome that they're trying to achieve. And that should not be what they're doing. What they ought to be doing is trying to report as much of the facts as they can to give you the full picture.
To have more questions.
Well, so you can make up your own mind about things rather than starting out saying, how do we want our viewers to view this particular story or to respond to this, and what things can we do to get them to respond in that way?
So let me understand this. Trump didn't take them out because he wanted to take them out. He took them out to save them.
Well, I think he took them out to get them out of the way of Turkey. I think President Trump has, at least it was his campaign issue, that he wanted to pull us out of these wars in the Middle East. And I think what's happened is he's gotten into office, and the resistance from the, ensconced D.C. interests, there's a lot of money made. A lot of money is made in these wars. We could go back to General Smedley Butler and read his little 19-page tract, which was actually a speech called War is a Racket. And he talks about the war profiteers, the war dogs, the people who make their money from war and from overcharging the government during times of war for supplies, for materiel, for everything. And there's a lot of money in that. And now we've got an entire group of folks who live inside D.C. area. I don't know if it's technically inside the Beltway or not, but, you've got all these little cities around the Pentagon that have grown into these, massive complexes of folks that are involved either with contractors or in military attaché positions themselves. And these folks, it's in their interest, unfortunately, to continue the wars. and to have constant war in all places. And so I think that's a very sad development. So I would like to see us try to get out of some of these wars. At the same time, I understand and I get the fact that sometimes there isn't another option to defend yourself or defend freedom other than going to war. And, we kind of saw that with Nazi Germany. So you can't necessarily make peace with all these dictators around the world, but you also can't confront every single one of them in every single place. I mean, we're wanting to confront Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which we've been doing for, better part of 10 years now. We've been messing around in Syria with the goal of taking him out. Okay, well, if we're figuring out who's like Hitler, it's not Bashar al-Assad, who controls a relatively small country with a relatively small economy and a relatively small military. He hasn't invaded, a big portion of the globe, and he's not targeting other places like in the U.S., like Hitler was, targeting, wanting to fly these long-range stealth bombers that the Nazis had developed over to New York City and bomb New York. So, but we don't have that with a lot of the dictators that we concern ourselves with, or the Muammar Gaddafi. We had to go in and take him out. We saw he died, right? We had to do that, right? Because why? Because Gaddafi was threatening us? Not really. Okay, I get the Lockerbie bomb, I get all that stuff, but I'm saying, was he a direct threat to the United States, a credible threat? And I say, if you're being real about it, and you're not just talking about some talking point that your corporate master gave you, that you have to go on TV and you have to say and you have to try your best to sound credible, then I think you have to look at these things and say, no, he really wasn't a threat to us. So pull some troops out of Syria. I think that's a good thing. We need to get our troops home. We don't need them all over the world. Think about what can happen. When you have troops everywhere, you've got flashpoints. You've got the opportunity to get drug into wars all around the world.
Isn't Syria an area, too, where you see the people who we're trying to support there get attacked, and then we don't know if it was a government inside job or if it was ISIS or if it was people that we are fighting against? It's almost like, to make a very childish comparison, but Scooby-Doo. Yeah. The masks keep coming off, and it's a different person. Oh, no, this was really the bad guy. No, this was really the bad guy. Yeah. It's confusing. Yeah. As is all of the Middle East.
Absolutely. It's a big mess over there. It's been a mess for a long time. We're not able to clean it up, apparently, because we've been trying. It's not like we haven't been engaged in the Middle East. It's not like we haven't been over there trying to, quote-unquote, fix things, but they're not getting fixed. So I think at some point you just have to say, this is not in our national interest to continue to stay in these areas and keep our troops. And it's not just an academic discussion. These troops are people with families who are Americans. And they serve willingly and honorably, and they go over there when called. But does that mean they want to be over there? Not necessarily, not necessarily. But they do their duty when they're called. So we ought to show them the respect of not calling them up except when we absolutely have to.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.